As we grow up, we tend to want to figure out where we have come from, what we're doing, and what we are becoming as people. And no series does this better than the X-Men. And I think a show that does this extremely well, especially for the younger generation, is X-Men Evolution. The entire premise of X-Men is flipped on top of its head, and it's shown to us through a teenage lens. I think one of the episodes that does this really well is Season 1, Episode 10, Shadowed Past. It is an episode that focuses heavily on both Rogue and Kurt, or Nightcrawler, as they both sort of talk about their past, especially being adopted children. The episode begins with Rogue having memories of Mystique throwing what appears to be Nightcrawler over into a river by accident, seeing Mystique basically abandon Nightcrawler in favor of staying with Magneto, even though it doesn't seem that she wanted to do it. And of course, when Kurt hears this, he's absolutely thrilled. He is excited by the prospect that maybe he would actually get to meet his birth mother. Now, Professor X doesn't tell him that it might be Mystique yet, but he just seems excited to try and figure out who it was, just like most people would be probably excited and or at least trying to figure out who their original birth parents were if they were adopted, no matter how great their adopted parents are. But Rogue is definitely not advocating for Nightcrawler to go searching for his original birth parents. She fears that it is Mystique and doesn't really want Nightcrawler to be led into heartbreak and be upset by what he finds. She thinks it might just be better for him if he doesn't seek out the answers, which of course angers Kurt. Kurt really wants to understand who he is and where he comes from, especially being a mutant.
Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they were just trying to protect you.
How? By hiding my own past from me?
Kurt,
listen, maybe you can live without knowing, but I've got to know the truth about my life. I'm out of here.
So Kurt leaves for the mansion, and he even starts to begin questioning his adopted family, who he believes held the truth from him. Kurt really desires to understand where he is from, and so when he is given a note and it may be a bit of a clue as to who he is and where he comes from, he jumps at the chance without even thinking twice about this. So Kurt decides to head to the location that he was told to go meet at, hoping that he would be able to understand and be told about his past, and that maybe, if he was lucky, he would be meeting his birth parent. So when Kurt shows up and announces himself and sees a hooded figure, he is sort of excited but also tentative, hence why he came in his X-Men uniform. But when he realizes that it was Mystique, Kurt is very, very upset by this fact. He is upset at Mystique for abandoning him. He is upset at her for leaving him with his adopted family. And it gets even worse when the Brotherhood of Mutants decide to step in and essentially ruin the reunion and Kurt's chances of getting to understand why his mother abandoned him. And of course, per usual with these types of shows, the X-Men do show up and do try to fend off and fight for Kurt, but Mystique specifically goes out of her way to run away, and Rogue goes to try and stop her. Rogue is actually extremely upset that Mystique would even leave and essentially abandon one of her friends. Knowing how hard that hurts Rogue as a person, she doesn't like to see that enacted on someone else. But at the same time, when the episode does come to an end, Rogue kind of is hesitant to even want to admit to Nightcrawler that his mother might be Mystique, fearing it might hurt her friend more than help.
Maybe she's just messing with you.
I guess. But there is a certain resemblance.
Hey, look, that doesn't mean anything. Let's just wait till the prof finds more answers for you. Then you'll know for sure.
Somehow, I think he already knows more than he's willing to tell us.
Maybe. But if he does, he's probably got good reasons for not telling you.
Yeah, sure.
Rogue herself probably understands what Nightcrawler's going through the most out of anybody in the X-Mansion in this first season, and she genuinely wants to be there and help him. She wants to help him find answers just as much as he wants to find them himself, but she's also very careful and guarded when it comes to taking care of his feelings. She doesn't want him to end up extremely hurt by what he might find, and so she sort of keeps the truth from him, or at least her idea of the truth. But another part of this episode that I think is done really well is we don't just see it from Kurt's point of view. We spend a lot of this episode seeing it from Mystique's point of view and seeing how she deeply regrets leaving Kurt, and as we later find out, leaving Rogue, as it turns out they are both her children. She seems to regret the actions and choices she had made, and even though she might not be a good person, it's very clear throughout the episode that Charles Xavier knows, and that he goes and at least tells Mystique that, hey, your son is doing okay, and that he has become a fairly good person. And even though Mystique will never show it outwardly, it's clear just how much this affects her as a person, to the point that she was even willing to spy on Nightcrawler earlier in the episode, and was the person who sent the letter to him, hoping that he would come so she could at least provide answers, to at least atone a little bit for what she has done. But I think the most messed up part of this episode is that throughout it, Professor Xavier knows the entire time that Mystique is Nightcrawler's mother. As a matter of fact, he sent Logan earlier in the episode to go check out the weapons facility lab. And to make it even worse, not only does Rogue think she knows, but Professor X, Logan, Jean Grey, and Scott Summers all know for a fact who Nightcrawler's mother is, and they decide to keep it from him, citing that he's too young to really take on the burden of that, which in my opinion is bullshit.
So when are you gonna tell Kurt about all this?
I'm not so sure the elf needs to know. At least not yet. Some of this stuff could be pretty damaging.
It's often shown, not only in media but in real life, that your teenage years are sort of developing who you are as a person. You're slowly molding and carving yourself out. You start to get agency. You're able to really speak for yourself. And I think a lot of this leads people to want to discover who they are and how they will fit into this world. And so when Kurt hears that he might be able to see his biological family, even if it's just his mother, and to sort of understand where he comes from, I think that's a big character point for him. But I really think it's messed up in the fact that they tried to withhold that from Kurt. I know it might be damaging and it's going to be hurtful, but sometimes it's easier to simply pull off that band-aid early, to let him know what he is and who his birth mother actually is, especially now that I think he is definitely old enough to understand. And we see the fallout of this a couple seasons later, and it really isn't pretty. As a matter of fact, this lingers with Kurt for multiple seasons, and I think that's my biggest gripe with this episode, is that they just don't give him the agency to choose. But then again, what do I know? I'm just some dude who sits in his basement and makes YouTube videos. I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for watching this video. I truly appreciate it. If you've made it this far in the video, why don't you comment down below and tell me your favorite episode of any of the X-Men animated series that have been made. That includes Evolution, 97, the original X-Men animated TV show, and X-Men, and the Wolverine and the X-Men, yeah. Anyways, thank you all for watching. If you want to support me on my Patreon, it's down below. It's about $1 a month. You get to see these videos early and unedited. If you can't do that, just feel free to give me a like, a subscribe, just leave a comment, whatever you feel like doing. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.